Russell Carey, Program Associate at the Winthrop Rockefeller Foundation. We're going to go ahead and get this Moving the Needle Working Group call started. Some other folks may join a little bit later, but we'll do some introductions here in a minute to see who's on the call so far. Our guest speaker today is Bruce Lockett. He's the grant writing consultant for BGA CDC, the Boys, Girls, Adults Community Development Center in Marble, Arkansas. Hello, Bruce.
Oh, hello, Russell.
And we also have Glenn Nishimura, who's a longtime consultant with the foundation and who's been working on facilitating the Moving the Needle Working Group.
Good afternoon.
And just to do a quick overview of the agenda for today's call. If you have background noise where you are, if you're not in a quiet place, please mute your phone, but you are welcome to unmute and ask questions at any point in the conversation. Today we're going to answer some questions, talk about what is crowdfunding, different types of crowdfunding, how nonprofits use it, some basic elements of crowdfunding, what some of the major platforms are for using it, some examples that are being used right here at home in Arkansas, and give everyone access to some resources if they're interested in using crowdfunding as part of their financial strategy in the future. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Bruce.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I want to just do a disclaimer here that Glenn and I, neither of us are being paid by any of these platforms, nor do we endorse them. These are just examples of platforms that we found on the internet, and no way do we prefer one over the other. Just want you to know that we found these through research, and we're presenting to you as options, but by no means is this a comprehensive guide to conducting a crowdfunding campaign. It's really just an overview of some of the major issues that one should consider before undertaking a crowdfunding campaign. All right. As we say, this is just the basics. Crowdfunding is pretty essentially, the essence of crowdfunding is obtaining a large amount of donations from many people using the internet. And there are three parts of there are three parts of the crowdfunding campaign.
If someone has their phone on speaker, could you please mute your phone? I think that's causing an echo. All right, thank you.
Okay, the three components are the creator, the supporter, and the platform. And pretty much the creator is the person that essentially creates the campaign, the supporter or donor is the person that supports it, and then lastly we have the platform that connects all these entities together in such a way that the campaign can be conducted. I know everyone has heard about crowdfunding. It's beginning to be a very big buzz in not only the nonprofit community but also in the business community. Having raised since 2013 some $5.1 billion worldwide, that makes it pretty impactful. That's some new revenue that nobody can laugh at. That you got to take crowdfunding seriously. My estimation is crowdfunding is to nonprofits what online courses were to the major institutions. I don't know, about 5 or 10 years ago, only Friends universities were offering online classes. Now everyone is getting into the online classes. And I feel that crowdfunding will be similar here in the next 3 to 5 years. Now, one thing we got to understand that crowdfunding is not a silver bullet that solves all your financial woes. That some of the things that nonprofits are faced with, raising monies for employee salaries, overhead, it does not replace your development staff. That I want people to kind of see this crowdfunding as a strategy to supplement development activities that they are currently doing. That it doesn't replace anything. That at best it may be able to enhance one's fundraising by giving you another avenue to raise funds. click here. Type of fund, crowdfunding. Now, crowdfunding is pretty much, I call it like a bakery. It has a whole bunch of everything in it. You can go in there and get all kinds of loaves of bread. But the three major crowdfunding types I'm looking at is charity crowdfunding, which is basically, it's about crowdfunding that supports the whole organization. In many cases, you may have a donation page that may do this. You may have different campaigns that are kind of general in nature, and they support the whole organization, whereas the donation-based one, the emphasis on the donations. You'll find some platforms, they put a lot of emphasis on what do people get in return for their donation. And I know the two major platforms, Kickstarter and Indiegogo, they have a requirement that one must offer a reward to the donors. Now, thirdly, I just put this in here for comparison. The equity-based crowdfunding is where one would donate monies in exchange for a stake within the enterprise. Now, that's not going to apply to nonprofits unless you're doing some social venture type thing, but it's just to show you that crowdfunding also has a business component, that really crowdfunding as we see it was developed to fund startups. And what happened was folks found that nonprofits could use the same model. So we began to use some of the larger platforms to do fundraising.
And I know we've had a couple more people join. Just want to make sure that everyone can hear the presentation fine and knows that you can unmute yourself at any point if you have questions during the presentation.
Phone, somebody or somebody. Okay.
Now, we're looking at choosing the right platform, some of the major considerations. You want to look at your organizational capacity. Some platforms are designed for individuals and small groups, whereas some may be, some of your more popular ones are really designed for people with great capacity, and especially those with great facility with social media. The type of fundraising project is also important, that you can fund things like a community garden, you can do a giving day, or one can do, say, a virtual house party. All of these can be done with these crowdfunding platforms. So choosing the platform to fit what the function is one of the considerations that you'll want to have also. Now, the level of social media literacy is really a concept about knowing how to navigate social media and be able to discern different messages from social media. So one of the things that we got to look at, crowdfunding is fueled by social media. It is the gas that drives the engine. So one of the things you want to look at is that if you don't have a very complex social media strategy currently in place, doing larger fundraising platforms and activities would not be the best thing to do. And the size of the project, you'll see that some people have used crowdfunding to generate $200, some have used it to generate $2,000, and some have generated as much as $20,000. In the case of some of the smaller donations, like if one wanted to raise $500 to buy seeds for the community garden, sometimes the emphasis is not really what you're raising for, but one can imagine if 100 people gave you $5 to buy seeds, those are 100 people you can put in your donor base that when you're doing other fundraising activities, you can utilize their name and contact information. Now, this here link is
Some people are on the phone, Bruce. So.
right. Okay. Well, this is a link that at your leisure you can go and view some of the characteristics of some of the platforms, what they're designed to do and what they utilize. Some platforms are better for creative projects. Some of them are designed to promote social causes. Some of them are designed for for-profits, and this just gives you a breakdown of some of the things that these various platforms have.
So, Bruce, let me just interrupt here because I just wanted to. We've already gone through a lot of information.
Yes, sir.
And I mean, it seems to me that some of the important things you said is that really crowdfunding is internet-based and it's really based in being adept or using social media, whether it be Twitter or Facebook or whatever, and that you got to have an idea for a project, and you kind of have a strategy around social media, and then you have to find a platform.
That's right.
And you named some platforms, and we're going to go over it, and they're across the top of this chart. So we're going to talk a little bit more about platforms, but all platforms are different, and there are tons of different platforms that you can consider, and so you're going to have to make a choice. Some of them are better for nonprofits, and some of them are better for, film projects or what have you. And then you have to kind of carry through your strategy through your platform to reach your donor base and get them to give you money. So that's kind of the essence of crowdfunding, as I hear you say.
You're correct, Glenn.
Okay.
You're correct. You're right on target. And some of the concepts we'll be talking about here are in this chart. Something like there are two funding models. One is called all or nothing, and that means once you set a goal for your crowdfunding campaign, if you don't make that goal, you don't get anything. Everybody gets their money refunded. And then the other funding model is called keep it all. And the keep it all funding model is based upon that regardless of how much you raise, you get access to every dollar that you receive. So it's very important that sometimes you may want to look at these models based on how you want to draw money down.
So, for instance, Bruce, you're saying that if you go to Kickstarter, in order to start a crowdfunding program there, you have to set a target, say $10,000.
That's right.
And if you raise only $7,000, you don't get any of it.
You don't get any of that.
And all the money goes back to the donors.
But if you look here in this diagram, Indiegogo, it has both of the platforms, but in an Indiegogo campaign, you can, if you set a goal of $10,000 and only reach 7, you can get that 7.
Okay.
So that's what you want to. Now, some people prefer the all or nothing because it encourages multiple donors. Sometimes you'll be raising $10,000 and you get to 9,000, and a donor look at that and say, we're only $1,000 from reaching our goal, and we have 2 days left. We're going to get that because I'm going to give that. So some people find the all or nothing be more. It's more of a motivator for some of their more reoccurring donors, where some people find that they'd much rather get something than nothing. So the all or nothing would not fit what they are trying to do.
So, Bruce, are you going to later on talk about the costs associated with this?
Yes. Now, next slide.
We have a question from the online chat, and it's Michael Jackson is asking, is it important to have a project or something new if you're going to use crowdfunding?
Yes, Michael, you must first have a project. That's the most important thing. You must have, whether you're trying to do a community garden or whether you're raising money to rehab some historic houses, that's very important because that project and the compelling need is what's going to captivate your donor. Did I answer this for you correctly?
I think that's what the question was. I think what I'm reading there is crowdfunding, does it work better for projects versus just trying to raise money generally for your organization? And I know some platforms won't even allow you to just raise general funds. Yeah,
GoFundMe will kind of do causes. There you can do hospital bills and things of that nature. But people tend to have greater success with projects. Even some have raised as much as $1 million, but it was a project or a product that was involved. And
there's usually a time limit, isn't there, Bruce? I mean, it's like a 30-day period.
Most have 30 to 60 days is what your window is. Now, some like CrowdWise and GoFundMe have unlimited timing, but they are keep it all type of platforms that cater to people doing causes.
Well, it seems to me it's just like writing a letter to a donor. I mean, it's harder to write a letter that just says, give us operating support money. It's much easier to say, we want to have these kids in the summer program, and if we raise $6,000 by X date, we can get 20 kids in. So a project just is a lot more focused and motivating.
I'm thinking that for what nonprofits do with crowdfunding, that the compelling project must be a part of the equation. I think you're going to get less traction with just saying fund inner city kids after school program. I think you'd be much better off saying that you're going to fund a trip to the Smithsonian Museum for these kids. And people can buy into that these kids need to see cultural types of things, and they will donate for that reason. Now, our next one is going to be the major crowdfunding platform. So we're going to get into some of these platforms, and you all can kind of click on them. The first one we have is GoFundMe. And GoFundMe is really a cause. If you go on if you click on GoFundMe, you'll see a lot of people that are funding scholarships, that are funding trips, that are funding different types of humanitarian events, a lot of things. And if you look to the left, you'll see where they have the categories. And you can see charity, community, and you can see all the levels and the different categories of crowdfunding activities. Some of the ones that are featured are going to be some of the more successful ones. They try to captivate people with the more successful ones. But GoFundMe is a keep-it-all type funding model, meaning that these campaigns, you get 100% or whatever you raise.
So, Bruce, I mean, I'm just going to throw it in over here because when you showed me these sites, I went in and I went to the search engine and I put in Arkansas. And it shot up all the Arkansas crowdfunding projects in the last several years. And it was really interesting. I found out all these crowdfunding things that I knew nothing about. So I encourage you all to do that because it really brings it home. What kinds of things they do and what other nonprofits and other organizations in Arkansas are doing.
And more specifically, Glenn, if you're going to do if you're considering doing a crowdfunding campaign around community gardens, just put community gardens in the search engine. If you're going to do housing rehabilitation, put that in the search engine. And it will pull up all of those crowdfunding activities on this particular site that are related to such. And what this gives you a chance to do is do the research. Before you undertake a crowdfunding campaign, research other places and other organizations that have done similar campaigns. And that's why they put these up. They want to encourage people to see what these actual campaigns have done. We're going to move to the next one, Kickstarter. Now, Kickstarter is one of the more popular crowdfunding campaigns. It's probably one of the bigger ones. If you say crowdfunding, most people say Kickstarter. The Kickstarter is a all-or-nothing platform that once you set your goal and your timeline, if you do not meet that goal, all the money is refunded to the donor. But once you meet your goal, then the money is funded to you. Now, I got to also, when you're looking at these sites, always look at the fees because you want to make sure when you do your budget for your crowdfunding campaign that you take in consideration that if you raise $10,000, that whole $10,000 will not be coming to you. The crowdfunding campaign will deduct 5% for their expenses, and the credit card processors will also usually do 3 to 5%. So you're looking at taking about 10% off the top. That if one is raising $10,000, that you only get about $9,000 of that once everybody's taking their fees out. But Kickstarter it's a donation-based platform in that there is a reward related to the donation. So when you're doing a Kickstarter campaign, you must define at what level people contribute and what do they get for it. Some people do postcards, posters, T-shirts. You may get if the campaign is to create an album, that person may get a free album or a free CD rather. So you got to understand that. Now,
can I go off topic for a second?
Go ahead, Glenn.
I saw a film at the Arkansas Film Festival called The Grace of Jake, and it was made in Palestine, Arkansas, and it was a great movie. And at the end of the movie, it said, "Thanks for our Kickstarter supporters." It shocked me. There was a list of tons of people who gave to this film so that this film could be made. And the benefit they got was they got opening night tickets in Forest City to see the film last October. So it was great. It was a great film. It was a great event. It was wonderful. And it all happened through Kickstarter.
So, I mean,
And a reward for something like Kickstarter doesn't always have to have monetary value either. It can be you get your name on a thank you plaque, or you get mentioned in a video or something like that. So there are ways to be creative when you're trying not to give away all the money that you're raising. But generally, the better rewards that are offered for each level of donation, the more likely you are to get those larger donations.
And speaking of that, when you go to Kickstarter, you can look at those rewards, and they will tell you how many people donated $100 and got their name on the CD, or how many people donated $500 and got to meet the artist. So you'll be able to see at what level did the most people give in terms of the reward. So you can kind of gauge that if $500 to meet the artist didn't get but 2 people, and 200 people gave $250 to get their name in the CD cover. So I mean, those are things you want to look at. The next one is Indiegogo. Indiegogo is probably the oldest crowdfunding platform, and second only to Kickstarter. It was created to finance films, so it's a very creative-oriented crowdfunding platform. It, like Kickstarter, is reward-based in that you must give away something to the donors. And it has 2 funding levels. It has an all-or-nothing or a keep-it-all funding model, so you can choose which one of those that you want to use to fund your project. And you'll see here different projects that are being funded by Indiegogo. But Indiegogo also has a search engine where you can put in there the state or the city or the project, and it will give you all those people who have began campaigns within that locale or within that category of funding. The next we have is Kiva. Now, Kiva is what they call a debt-based crowdfunding campaign, where it gives you a loan. The borrower is listed on Kiva, and the supporters and donors find those borrowers that they want to support, and they give them. Now, there's a minimum of $25 that you must give, but the caveat to Kiva is you get your money back if the project is successful. Now, they have an option where you can donate that money back to another project or just donate it to Kiva. Now, Kiva is one of the few of the platforms that is actually a nonprofit. Kiva itself is a nonprofit. But it's one that nonprofits are less likely to use.
I've given to a couple of things on Kiva, and every one is a guy started a business here in Little Rock and wanted some money. One is a nonprofit, and every so often I get an email that says, "Oh, Robert has repaid you 54 cents." And it gets back into your bank account, and you can reloan it to some other thing. But you go to Kiva and you put Arkansas, and you see all the people who have registered on Kiva and who are looking for an investment. If you're looking for an investment opportunity, it's a cool site. I like it, but it's a loan, so for nonprofits, it's not as attractive as a donation.
All right, now we're gonna. Okay, our last. We got one more, Crowdwise. And Crowdwise is a keep-it-all campaign that you keep all the money that you raise, and it's mostly around causes. And there's an interesting feature about Crowdwise in that it has a reward system that you accrue points based on the people interacting with your campaign. And with these points, you go to the Crowdwise store and you can buy a T-shirt and you can do different types of things with it. Now, for nonprofits, I think up to $5,000, they don't charge a fee. But in addition to the processing fees and the credit card fees, if you raise, I think, more than $5,000, Crowdwise charges nonprofits a monthly subscription fee. So you got to look at that and be careful about looking at that aspect of Crowdwise. Okay, next slide. As we have talked about these crowdfunding platforms, now we're looking at getting into what can you do with them. And basically, you can do You can do programs, projects, and this particular one here is a Indiegogo crowdfunding campaign that funds a youth art advocacy program. And you can look at it here, and it's just an example of what one can do with it. This is a pretty interesting campaign. Next one, if you hyperlink here, this is going to take you to a St. Jude's donation page. Now, this is one of the more simpler things you can do with crowdfunding, in that it's not a campaign, it's just an ongoing donation. St. Jude's has the, I guess, the distinction of being one of the foremost children hospitals. So this works well for them. I don't know, this is pretty static and it doesn't interact with an audience. It just gives you the ability to give. But it's just an example of a very simple crowdfunding mechanism. And then one thing I want to advise everybody, I've been working, you can add donations to your Facebook page. And if you all email me or Russell, I can send you a link to a YouTube video that I recently learned how to add in the toolbar of your Facebook, a donate hyperlink that would take one to your PayPal account. So, you know, I noticed that one thing, and that many nonprofits have a lot of information on Facebook. The one thing is missing. There's not an opportunity for one to give. So you done educated people, created awareness about what you've done, but don't have a mechanism for them to contribute. And so that's a simple way of doing crowdfunding without getting a platform and doing a lot of organization. But lastly, if you click on this link, this is a link to an event. And you'll see on this event, you're allowed to register. It's a walk-in road, which is a fundraising event that this particular organization had. But crowdfunding can be used to register and donate to events itself. And we'll get in. Crowdfunding as an event is called a Giving Day. And, you know, we recently had our Arkansas Gives Day. That's a means of crowdfunding, and it is an event in itself. And that's something that organizations may want to try to do their own Giving Day. And that's just an example of what you can do with crowdfunding. Right, that's Arkansas Gives, and it was a great campaign. It was a great campaign. WIF was very much involved, and I had an opportunity to give and promote BGA CDC during this time. But our next section, we're going to get into some of the mechanics of what goes into a crowdfunding campaign. And this is a simple pictogram that first we look at the project, and what you associate with the project is a compelling story. You must have a story. The next thing, you must engage your community. And this community we're talking about is your donors, your staff, and your board. You got to connect those people with your social media channels. And not only connect your donor, staff, and members to your social media channel, you also want to create a social media presence. And we're going to talk about that presence. And basically what we're talking about is, if you're going to do a crowdfunding campaign and use Facebook to promote your campaign, make sure that 3 to 6 months before your campaign, there's something on Facebook that the only thing, if someone says, okay, we're doing a crowdfunding campaign to help teach the kids how to grow vegetables, but somebody looks on your Facebook page and it hasn't been updated in 3 months. So they're not going to be as confident in engaging with the campaign because they see, well, I don't know how serious they are about the crowdfunding campaign if they're not serious about their social media channels. And nextly, once you have your social media presence, you choose a platform. So that's the order. You must create a compelling story for your project. That's going to hook your supporters into the project. Next, you must engage your donors, your staff, and your board first. Many people do fundraising, and they leave the building and ask other people for money before they do the service in the building. So it is very important that one engages your core group of supporters before you go outside. I kind of call it my, they always tell the parable or the metaphor that a prophet is not known in his own home, but a non-prophet, to be successful, must be known in his own neighborhood. So remember that. But we're next slide. And once this is done, the last one was the funding. The funding is going to come only after you've created a compelling story, connected it to your base, which is your donors, your staff, and your board, created a media presence whereby people know that you are an authentic organization by looking at your social media channels, seeing the things that you posted, and thirdly, once one connects with a platform, the funding will come. Some of the basic elements, as I said before, we're going to discuss the compelling story that, and me and Ken talked about this over lunch, that many of these aspects, nonprofits are very much accustomed to creating a compelling story around whatever they are doing. So in many cases, we're not recreating the story. We're not recreating the wheel. I know Glenn works with organizations all the time where they must craft their story. The next item we're going to talk about is going to be that positive community engagement, which is all about mobilizing one's base. And this is important because they say 90% of successful crowdfunding campaigns, during the first week, they generate 30% of their goal. And most of these people do this from the people they know. Now, the other 70% may come from people you don't know, but people you don't know will only give once they see there's some momentum around the crowdfunding campaign. I often tell people don't jump on trains that are not moving. That until that train moves down the track, nobody wants to get on it. So what I'm saying is, if you undertake a crowdfunding campaign, mobilize your base to say that if we're going to raise $1,000, let's see if we can mobilize someone to give that first 300 amongst the group that we know. And then we're going to talk about the social media presence. So let's talk about the crowdfunding story. Now, for those on the computer, you'll see here the crowdfunding story is a simple template that I got off the internet that kind of takes you step by step through the crowdfunding story. That you first generate a context. Whatever you're doing must fit into something that people can recognize. In many cases, you may say, well, they already know we do such and such, but you got to give them a general parameter where you are operating. Then secondly, one must identify issue. That if you, in this case, we're dealing with rehabbing a neighborhood using community gardens. And if you look at the example of context, you see where we talk about the neighborhood. The next, we talk about the condition of the neighborhood, which is the issue. And then thirdly, we talk about the solution. How are we going to improve this neighborhood based on these other two? And then thirdly, we're looking at the impact. What will it do to mobilize people? And lastly, we're going to ask them for we're going to state the goal that we're trying to achieve and tell them what the money will go for. Are there any questions about the compelling story? Okay. So our next topic is the positive community engagement. And here we're talking about mobilizing one's base. Enough cannot be said about what I call mobilizing the people in the building. You must spend some time. If you're going to be sincere about helping people, you must get those people that are volunteers and that are employees and supporters of your organization. They must come on board first. And secondly, that crowdfunding is really about increasing your donor base, because that's one of the benefits of crowdfunding. That at the end of the day, whether you raise $10,000 or $20,000, you have a new set of donors that now you can cater to them, and you can also target your future fundraising to them. One thing that I think that is good, many times we have social media channels, but nobody in the building likes the Facebook page. Nobody in the building that you work with is a member of your LinkedIn network. And in many cases, people in the building haven't viewed the YouTube videos that are posted by the organization. So what we want you to do is that once you get your social media channels, you want to encourage people within your organization to look at them, to share them, to interact with them. Okay. So basically, we're talking about moving your community, that small community of supporters that are part of your organization, getting them involved with your crowdfunding idea before you even start. Next, we're going to talk about the media presence. We briefly talked about social media being the fuel that drives crowdfunding, but your social media presence is the appearance that you have when people look at your social media channel. If you publicize your events and your milestones of your organization on Facebook, currently, on an ongoing basis, people will see what type of organization you have. If you are tweeting what's going on, then people see what you're doing. And so one of the things you want to do in terms of creating a media presence, you want to encourage the people within your organization, not only that they join and like and interact with your social media channels, that they also encourage their friends and their families and associates to also interact with it. And by doing this, once you start your social media campaign, people will see that you have a presence, that you have been doing things, and the evidence of this is presented on your social media channel.
So, Bruce, I like that last bullet a lot because, a lot of times you talk about you doing social media, and I'm too old to really understand what that means. I mean, if you really want somebody to be somebody to help you, you should really look for people who are young and have dealt in that sphere all the time. But this list of liking Facebook pages and retweeting tweets and all that kind of stuff, that makes a lot of sense to me. But I didn't really understand that that's what you were talking about until I saw that list.
Right. I mean, that's what we want people to do. I think some people think social media is the end in itself. You put up a Facebook page, you set up a Twitter account, or you set up a YouTube account. But what we should do is now, it's not important that everybody do this now. If you got young people in the building, get those young people to like your Facebook page. Tell them to give it to their friends. And one thing you can kind of nudge them with is that this will help the organization. And if you can go from 100 likes on your Facebook page to 1,000, when you do a crowdfunding campaign, they see you have 1,000 likes, that 1,000 people have actually went to your page and clicked the like button. That gives you a lot of capacity. And so, and the same thing with people commenting and retweeting your Facebook and your Twitter posts.
Let me just also, it just occurred to me, I read an article, I've been reading a lot of articles about crowdfunding, and one of them, the woman who was writing the article said, absolutely, positively do a video. No longer than 3 minutes. She said all the successful, because videos capture people's attention more than anything else, and it's how they're used to seeing things. So she said you can do a video on your phone if it amounts to that, and there's a certain attraction to that. But by all means, do a video that supports your crowdfunding. So I just threw that in there.
Oh yeah, from what I've read, videos are most compelling, and most of your successful crowdfunding campaigns have a video. Now, the two most popular platforms, Indiegogo and Kickstarter, it's almost a requirement that you must have a video. But GoFundMe and Crowdwise and some of the others, you can use photographs, or you can just type out your story. But videos, and I didn't get into videos because that's another whole webinar on how to get the right person to do it, how to script it. What I've been told, though, or what I've read, video shouldn't be done spontaneously. That one should start out with pencil and paper and create the video based upon the compelling story. Just don't pull out your iPhone and say, Glenn, say something about this crowdfunding campaign. But I think there's two more. The video and crowdfunding planning and execution, that's a whole other webinar, guys. This is just getting your feet wet and kind of getting you familiar with some of the basics of crowdfunding. But the media presence, I kind of tell people that related to crowdfunding, social media is the highway to get you to the destination. In order to get there, you got to put bodies on that highway, and you got to have traffic. So as much traffic as you can put on the highway in terms of people commenting about what your organization doing, you updating what your organization is involved in, some milestones, honoring some people, things of that nature, the better. Now, we're going to look at some example of successful. Now, this is something that Glenn insisted that we do because he wanted to drive the point home that crowdfunding is happening in Arkansas. Whether we know it or not, there are people that are doing it. This first one is a small Kickstarter crowdfunding campaign where they raised $236 to do these what they call little libraries, and they're no more than little birdhouses with books in them. But this is an example of not having a very high goal. This campaign lasted only 30 days, and it raised $236
in Paragould.
In Paragould, man, you see that Paragould is not a very big place. But I put this on here just to show you the bottom end. These people only wanted to raise $236 to create one of these little birdhouses, the supplies that would create that. If we look at our second example, is the Arkansas Times used a platform called IOBIT to raise money to do some investigative reporting. Now, they raised some $13,074. Now, this is an example. I've never heard of IOBIT, but it must be a platform that has a pretty large interactive audience for them to raise some $13,000. And it's an ongoing campaign, but as of April of this year, they'd raised $13,074.
Well, you know, this is a good example of Arkansas Times has a very loyal following.
Okay.
If they ask for a
money
contribution, there's a core group of people who are going to come step up to it. So it starts. It's speaking to what you're talking about. It starts with a lot of like core people putting money in and creating the vision of movement and having other people join up.
Okay. I mean, I guess what Glenn is saying is you don't need a real popular platform if you have a strong base of supporters that will support you if you're doing something. And see, our third example is a group out of Fayetteville, Arkansas Seed, and it's a Kickstarter campaign that lasts for 30 days and raised some $10,000 to expand the community garden. Here again, small group in Fayetteville. Use a pretty powerful platform. Then lastly, we have our own Arkansas Gives that raised almost $2 million in 12 hours. From 8 to 8 was the limit. But you got to understand, y'all, that's what I'm saying. Crowdfunding is not a quick mechanism. Those people that were involved with Arkansas Gives know it took more time in the planning and organization than the 12 hours of the campaign. It took months. Now, Russell, did you work with them?
On the foundation's part, they approached us to help support the campaign half a year in advance. So we provided a grant that gave matching dollars to our current grantees who signed up for Arkansas Gives and participated. But I know that Heather Larkin was hitting the road, and their staff was involved heavily in promoting around the state, talking to nonprofits, talking to communities. And it wasn't just them that had a lot of prep to make it successful. The individual organizations that raised money through it had to put in the groundwork to make it a successful campaign. There were some small organizations that did what you said. They engaged their staff, their board, and got them to donate first and get the ball rolling. And that got their name to the top of the list, which helped attract funding from folks outside of the organization after that. When you start to see these names pop up of organizations you've never heard of. You click on it and say, hey, maybe I'll donate to them.
So that's all. I mean, to show you that the largest campaign on here is Arkansas Gives, and it's pretty impressive. As Russell said, they start at least 6 months out planning for it. So, I mean, the caveat there is that even though your campaign may not last no more than 30 to 60 days, there's about 6 to 9 months of planning and organization that goes into these campaigns. And I want to add, you should do at least a couple of months of research, just going on some of these sites that we have on the PowerPoint and exploring what has been done and trying to glean how did they do it. And so that
I guarantee you're going to know some of the people on that list. You can just call them up and ask them. But I'm really pleased with this slide and the research you did on the Arkansas and the stuff that I found out just by going to Indiegogo and Kickstarter and putting Arkansas in the search engine. I encourage all of you to do that when you got some time if you're interested in crowdfunding, because it's very impressive. Very impressive.
And our next slide is just some training and resources. And basically, I have a series of hyperlinks here that you can go to, a crowdfunding video library that has a collection of videos that one can see. The second hyperlink will take you to a Wikipedia crowdfunding services comparison chart that has an extensive list of crowdfunding platforms from all over the world that one can look at. And then the last two are long videos of crowdfunding panels where they are talking about certain aspects of crowdfunding. And that's going to conclude my part of it. I want to open it up now for discussion or questions from the audience.
While we're doing that, while we're waiting for you to see if you all have any questions, let me just say that I sent out the, I hope it was the final edition of this PowerPoint. And all those hyperlinks ought to be live, and you ought to have this PowerPoint in your computer. And if you find that it's the wrong one, we'll be able to come on this site later on and download the real one. But you should have all these active hyperlinks in your computer right now.
And we have an online comment from Robert Holt just showing the power of having an established social media presence. Yesterday, they put on Facebook that they needed 300 pounds of chicken for the food bank, and today they're already at 450 pounds committed for people bringing it to the center.
Wow.
But it takes that work of building that social media network ahead of time and having enough updates that people know that there's information and compelling stories to check back there for that people will find and respond to something within 24 hours when there's a need.
Excellent. Congratulations, Robert.
Oh, yes, that's most impressive.
And just remember, if you want to ask a question and you've muted yourself, to unmute before you try to ask on the phone, and we can also take questions in the chat box online in the GoToMeeting window.
As always, I think in short order, we will have this posted so that you can, if somebody wants to listen to this whole session, which I think has been great, and get this PowerPoint, anybody can pick it up and listen to it or download it. From Russell will send something out when it's ready, right?
Right. I'll plan to get the video of the audio feed and the PowerPoint posted probably to YouTube, and then see if we can get a link embedded right there that lets you download the PowerPoint with the live links to all the resources.
Great.
Do we have any other questions about the presentation or resources or any comments about anyone who's used crowdfunding before?
I'm going to wrap up this. So, thank you all for joining us. I just wanted to spend a second here at the end to solicit your thinking about what other types of things we can be doing on our webinars. Russell and I are going to be talking about the rest of the year and beyond. We have some ideas about other topics that we want to present. You recall, by the way, that crowdfunding, when we met last October and we asked you the question about what you would like to talk about in the webinars, crowdfunding was the #1 response from everybody, and I'm glad we finally got around to it. I think in the interim we felt like we had to do something about the legislature and the bills that are being introduced and the general improvement funds, and we did a piece on Arkansas Gives, and we finally got to crowdfunding. But we also want to hear from you about whether or not, having done all this and, 8 months later, if you have any thoughts about what other things we can be doing on a webinar. We try to do something every month and a half or 2 months. So please feel free to send me an email with any suggestions that you have, and we'll run it by everybody and see what we can do next time.
All right. Thank you to Bruce Lockett for
thanks, Bruce,
for being our guest speaker today. A great presentation on crowdfunding. Thanks to Glenn for helping facilitate this group and this meeting today. And thanks from the Winthrop Rockefeller Foundation to everyone who keeps participating and giving us the best ideas for how we can help everyone to improve the work that they're doing and strengthen the nonprofit sector in Arkansas. So just thank you to everyone. Have a great afternoon, and we'll be in touch about our next Moving the Needle Working Group meeting.